I never thought my daughter's happiest day would turn into my most humiliating one. It all happened in an instant, so fast I barely registered the sound of glasses shattering, people gasping, and then, smack, that slap cut through the air like a knife. The entire ballroom, with more than 200 people, went dead silent. The music stopped. The stage lights were still aimed right at my face, illuminating every drop of blood welling up at the corner of my lip. And he, Alan, my new son-in-law, was still standing there, his hand trembling with alcohol and arrogance, saying clearly in front of everyone, "You stubborn old man, give me the keys to the ranch right now." I heard someone yell, maybe a waiter, maybe a guest, but everything around me went blurry. I just saw my daughter's face, Avery, her eyes wide with terror behind that white veil. She couldn't react. She didn't even dare to move closer. I just stood there, planted in the middle of the marble dance floor, smelling the booze and perfume, mixed with the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. People started whispering. The flashes from cell phones lit up. I heard someone say under their breath, "My God, did the groom just go crazy?" I tried to keep my balance, grabbing the edge of the banquet table. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him right in the face, but the voice of my wife, Marion, echoed in my head. "Never let your daughter see you lose control." I swallowed my anger. I stared hard at Alan and said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear, "You just dug your own grave, son." Then I turned around. The sound of my shoes echoed on the cold stone floor. Every step felt like I was walking on my own shattered pride. I didn't look back. Behind me, Avery called out softly, "Dad!" But her voice was trembling, weak, and it got choked off. I walked out of the ballroom. I crossed the brightly lit hallway, surrounded by stares of pity and contempt. At the door, the night wind hit me in the face. It was freezing, but at least it was real, unlike the fake smiles at that party. I got into my pickup truck. I sat there for a good while without starting the engine. My hands were still shaking. In the rearview mirror, I saw the red mark on my cheek. I touched it with my finger. It burned, but inside, I felt a different kind of pain, the pain of being humiliated by my own family. I pulled out my phone. I found the name of the one person I could trust. When he answered on the other end, I spoke slowly, my voice hoarse. "Robert, it's me. I need you in Austin. Tonight." There was a pause. Then, the familiar deep voice answered, "Are you sure, Richard?" I looked back at the hotel, where the wedding lights were still twinkling as if nothing had happened, and I answered, "I'm sure." It's time everyone knew the truth about the Double C Ranch. I started the truck. The roar of the engine mixed with the night, like the beat of a war drum, announcing a fight the other guy would never see coming. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments below. When the glass door shut behind me, the chaos was still echoing inside. I heard someone yell, "Call security!" Then the sound of running feet, chairs tipping over. The Austin night was cool, but sweat was running down my back. Every step toward the parking lot felt like it weighed a ton. I could feel people's eyes on my back, stares of curiosity, of pity, even of contempt. A father slapped by his son-in-law at his own daughter's wedding. There's no deeper humiliation. I stopped in the middle of the courtyard. I looked up at the flickering neon sign of the hotel. Inside, the chaos continued. Maybe they were dragging Alan out, or maybe Avery was crying. I pictured my little girl kneeling, her wedding dress dirty, holding a broken glass with shaking hands. That image kept playing in my head like a curse. A young hotel employee ran after me, panting. "Mr. Harrison, do you need me to call a doctor?" I shook my head, quickly wiping the blood from the corner of my mouth. "Not necessary, son. I just need some quiet." He looked at me for a second, then lowered his head and walked away. The headlights of the luxury cars in the parking lot reflected on my face, making the bloodstain look darker. I wondered how things had gotten to this point. Just a few hours ago, I was walking my daughter down the aisle, so proud to see her in her mother's old lace dress. I thought I'd done it. I had raised her. I had taught her to love and to be strong. And in the end, on the day she was starting her new life, I was reduced to a laughingstock in front of a crowd. I opened the truck door. I sat in the driver's seat. The rearview mirror reflected a face I didn't recognize anymore, aged, bruised, with sunken eyes. I remembered Marion, my wife, who used to say, Someday they'll take advantage of your kindness, but don't you let it kill you." She was right. The phone rang. Avery's name lit up the screen. My heart ached, but I didn't answer. I knew she'd be crying, saying, "Alan was just drunk, Dad. Don't be angry." That it was all a misunderstanding. No, my daughter needed to see the truth for herself. I looked out at the main avenue, where the car lights stretched out like a glittering thread through the night. I remembered the rainy seasons when I'd spend sleepless nights watching over the cattle. I remembered my good wife's face, smiling in our little kitchen. The Double C Ranch wasn't just land. It was the soul of my family, the blood and sweat of 3 generations. And tonight, a stranger had dared to insult all of that just to snatch it away. I took a deep breath. The pain in my face was fading. Inside, a hidden fire began to burn, not the fire of hatred, but the fire of determination. I gripped the steering wheel, my gaze fixed on the road leading out of town. "All right," I whispered, "it's time people knew who the real owner of that land is." Then I started the engine. The truck moved slowly into the night, leaving the fading noise behind, until there was only the dense silence, the silence of a storm that was just starting to form. The highway out of Austin was lit by yellow streetlights. I drove in silence. The window cracked open. The night wind blew in, stinging the wound on my cheek. The distant smell of a cigarette, the smell of asphalt, the smell of the night, it all mixed together, bringing me a strange calm. I wasn't shaking anymore. In my head, everything was starting to clear up, as if Alan's slap had woken up someone else inside me, the man I used to be before I lost Marion. I pulled over on the shoulder of the road. I took out my phone. The screen lit up, reflecting my sun-weathered face, my deep-set eyes. I scrolled through my contacts, stopping on a name I hadn't called in over 5 years. Robert Casey, the only person who knew the truth about the Double C Ranch. I took a deep breath and dialed. The phone rang 3 times and then it stopped. A deep voice came on the line, hoarse and calm, as if he'd been expecting my call. "Richard, is it time?" I let out a bitter laugh. I lit a cigarette. "Yeah, he went too far, Robert. He slapped me at the wedding right in front of Avery." Silence. Then Robert answered, his voice firm. "I'll be in Austin by morning. But you know, Richard, once we reopen the Double C file, there's no going back." "I know. This time I don't need an escape route. I just want my daughter to know the truth." We spoke briefly, without needing many words. Every word from Robert was like a door opening to the past. He had been the representative for the Meridian Group, the conglomerate that had bought my land years ago. He was also the one who watched me sign the contract that I then hid for 25 years. When the call ended, I sat there, watching the cigarette smoke scatter in the wind. A strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't fear, it was relief. Maybe because I was finally about to tell the truth I had buried for so long. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. In the distance, the silhouettes of the Texas hill country faded under the moon. I turned on my headlights. I drove slowly down the gravel road that led to the ranch. On both sides, old mesquite trees stood. The scrub brush had grown thick, but I still remembered every curve, every tree. This was where Marion and I started our life, where my daughter learned to walk, where so many generations of Harrisons had poured out their sweat. When I reached the ranch entrance, I stopped the truck, rolled down the window. The air was different here. The smell of dirt, of the wind, the distant sound of cattle. I looked at the old wooden sign hanging and swaying. Double C Ranch. Under the moon, the hand-carved letters were worn, but they were still there, like the beat of an old but stubborn heart. I turned off the engine. I sat in silence for a long time, and then I said softly, as if I were talking to my late wife, "You see, Marion." In the end, I had to keep my promise. I took out my phone, opened the voice memos again, and recorded a single sentence. "Tonight, I get my honor back, not with violence, but with the truth." Then I looked up at the starry sky, where the pale moon was sliding between the clouds, and I understood. From this night on, none of us could ever be the same again. That morning, before everything fell apart, Austin was bathed in a warm, honey-gold sun. I got up earlier than usual. I made coffee, opened the window, and listened to the birds singing in the garden. Everything seemed too peaceful to be the prelude to a storm. I still remember the warmth of the mug in my hands, and that feeling of a lump in my throat when I saw the wedding dress hanging in front of the mirror. Marion's dress. Avery came out of her room, her cheeks rosy, her brown hair falling softly on her shoulders. She put on that white lace dress, and for a moment I saw my wife. The same smile, the same light in her eyes. I had to turn away to hide the tear that was about to fall. "What do you think, Dad?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Just like the day your mother walked down the aisle," I said softly. "Only today she's not here to see it." Avery paused, then looked down. She gently touched the necklace with a small stone at her neck, the only thing she had from her mother. "I know Mom would be happy, Dad. She'd be proud of me." I didn't answer. The name Alan felt heavy in my chest. I had tried to hide that feeling of uneasiness for months, but every time my daughter mentioned him, a vague worry would surface, like when you smell smoke but can't see the fire yet. Before the ceremony, Alan came to the house with a big bouquet of flowers. He put his arm around my shoulders. He smiled politely, calling me Dad with such sweetness. He talked about the future, about investment plans, about developing the ranch. I just smiled, not answering. But inside, I felt that he wasn't coming to love, but to possess. When I walked Avery to the wedding car, the church bells were ringing slowly. The whole city seemed to glow in white, and I thought, maybe I was wrong about Alan. Maybe his intentions were sincere. My daughter was smiling so brightly that even my fears took a step back. At St. Michael's Church, under the light filtering through the stained glass windows, Avery turned to me and whispered, "Dad, I wish Mom was here so much." I squeezed my daughter's hand, feeling my heart clench. "Your mother is always here, Avery, in this light, in every beat of your heart." In that moment, I believed everything would be okay. I believed in my daughter's love, in the vows they were about to make before God. I couldn't imagine that just a few hours later, in the very place where people were celebrating happiness, a painful slap and humiliating words would echo. Now that I think about it, I understand. Maybe true happiness doesn't disappear. It just gets buried under layers of lies and greed. That morning, I had been living in an illusion woven from memories of my good wife and my daughter's smile. If I had known that soft light was just the prelude to the darkness coming, maybe I would have held my daughter longer and told her, "Not everyone who wears white has a clean heart." I can't say Alan's slap was completely unexpected. The truth is, deep down, the first warning bells had rung a long time ago. Small, vague, but persistent, like a cricket in the night. I had just chosen to ignore them because I wanted to believe my daughter had finally found happiness. The first time I saw Alan was on a March afternoon when he brought Avery to visit the ranch. He spoke eloquently, smiled at just the right moments, had a bright look in his eyes and a firm voice, like someone who knows they're going far in life. "I hear Avery say you've kept this ranch going for over 30 years, Mr. Harrison. That's admirable." I just smiled, offered him coffee, and then listened to him talk nonstop about investment projects, about the potential to develop a luxury resort in the heart of the Double C. From that day, I saw that in his eyes, there wasn't love, just numbers. A few months later, he started asking Avery things I thought were inappropriate. "Has your dad made a will? Whose name is on the deed? How much longer do you think your dad will want to keep managing things?" Avery told me about it like it was funny, not knowing that every question was a slow stab at a father's trust. One night, I happened to walk past the living room and heard him on the phone. The door was cracked open, his voice was low and hurried. "Yeah, the contract will go through. I just need to convince the old man to sign. This ranch is worth more than you can imagine." I froze. A chill went down my spine. But when I walked in, he had already hung up and turned to me with a friendly smile. "Just talking business, Dad." From that day on, I started watching him more closely. He was always respectful to my face, but whenever I turned my back, his look would change. Cold, calculating, as if he were measuring every acre of land, every parcel. Avery, meanwhile, trusted him blindly. She'd say, "Dad, don't be so suspicious. Alan wants to develop the Double C, not steal it." I stayed quiet. Every father wants to see his daughter happy. But if that happiness is built on lies, it's just sand in the desert. Another time, during dinner, he suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought about selling off part of the land to invest in tourism?" I put down my fork. I looked him straight in the eye. "Son, there are things you can't measure in money. This land is watered with the sweat of 4 generations of Harrisons. Nobody has the right to put a price on it." He smiled, raising his wine glass. "Just asking, Dad. Don't take it the wrong way." But I understood. People like Alan don't ask to learn. They ask to test the ground. The night before the wedding, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. From the next room, I could hear Avery laughing on the phone with him while I stared at the dark ceiling, my heart full of a nameless dread. I remembered my wife's words from years ago. "Whoever truly loves your daughter will give her peace. He won't turn her against her father." When I closed my eyes, I knew. Something very bad was coming. I just didn't imagine it would arrive so quickly. And on the very day, I thought I'd see my daughter's happiest smile. Now that I think about it, I realize Alan didn't just win my daughter's heart with sweet words. He also chipped away at her reason, little by little. And I, in my role as a trusting father, let it happen right under my nose. 2 years before the wedding, Avery started to pull away from me. At first, it was small things. She'd miss Sunday dinner. The calls were less frequent. Text messages were answered curtly. When I asked her, she'd say, "Alan's busy, Alan's tired, Alan needs me." I was happy, thinking my daughter had found a man who needed her. But I didn't understand that behind that need was a rope tightening around my daughter's neck. I remember that night well. I was on the porch fixing a pipe when I heard Avery and Alan arguing in the kitchen. "You don't have to talk about my dad like that." My daughter's voice was shaking. "I'm just telling the truth," Alan answered coldly. "You know how many of my friends laugh that your dad still uses an old typewriter. You think someone like that can still run this ranch?" I stood still in the darkness, my heart heavy as a stone. He didn't know I was listening. Avery went quiet, and then her voice faded. "My dad has worked his whole life for this place. You don't understand. That's exactly why I'm worried about you. You shouldn't have to carry that weight. The Double C needs a new generation, someone who knows how to make money, not someone who lives on memories." Those words, I knew, weren't just aimed at the ranch. They were aimed at me. He was teaching my daughter to see her father as old-fashioned, and he had succeeded. After that, every time I gave my opinion, Avery got defensive. "Dad, you're always so suspicious. Alan just wants what's best for our family." I looked her in the eyes and saw something strange. That wasn't the look of the little girl who believed her father was a hero. It was the look of someone who had been convinced her father was a burden. I tried to talk to Alan to find a way to make peace. One night, I invited him over. I poured us both a bourbon. I spoke slowly, with that deep voice my wife used to say made people listen. "Alan, you need to remember that nobody can build their happiness on the humiliation of others." He smiled slightly, raising his glass. "I just want to help you live more comfortably. But if you don't want to change, then don't blame me if I have to do it for you later." That sentence was like a hammer blow to the head. From that moment, I understood. He didn't just want Avery, he wanted my entire life. After that, I started tracking his every move, the times he borrowed the truck to see partners, the suspicious charges on the credit card, the secret calls after midnight. Avery still knew nothing. She believed in his love, blind as someone walking in a thick fog, not seeing the cliff right at her feet. I watched her walk away from me, unable to stop her. Being a father. Sometimes the most painful thing isn't losing a child. It's having to watch them walk straight into the storm, for a fact, is going to sweep them away. And just as I feared. That storm began the day she put on her wedding dress. The day I lost the daughter who once believed her father was never wrong. After hearing that argument in the kitchen, I understood I couldn't just stand by. I'd been too soft. I had trusted time too much, thinking that love would correct the deviations in my daughter's heart on its own. But time only made Alan's roots grow deeper. He was like a weed. The more you cut it, the stronger it grows. So I started to fight back, in silence. First, I went to see Dr. Patricia Cole, an old friend of my wife's. I asked her for a detailed general and mental health certificate, dated and signed. She looked at me in surprise. "Richard, you look healthier than most patients I see. What do you need this for?" I smiled, avoiding her gaze. "Maybe I just want to be prepared. In life, sometimes you have to prove you're sane, right when others think you've gone crazy." Then I contacted my old lawyer, James Reed. He had helped me sign many contracts in the past, a man meticulous down to the last comma. I asked him to review all the property and land use documents for the Double C Ranch. Who was the owner? What were the sales clauses, the contract terms? I didn't give him a reason. I just said, "Do it as if my life depends on it." I also started recording my conversations with Alan. He never suspected I knew how to use a smartphone that well. I'd hide the small recorder in my shirt pocket, capturing every word he said about investment plans, strategic alliances, selling off a piece of land to get started. He thought I was a senile old man, not knowing that every sentence he spoke was being saved as evidence. At night, when Avery came to visit, I tried to talk to her gently. I'd ask if she was happy, how Alan treated her. My daughter would smile and say, "He loves me so much, Dad. Only." "What is it?" I asked. "He says you're not ready to hand over management of the ranch. He says you should rest, let the younger generation take over." I nodded, trying to stay calm. I told her, my voice low but firm, "Honey, power isn't given to the person who demands it. The person who truly deserves it waits for it to be entrusted to them." Avery went quiet. Her eyes filled with tears for a moment. I knew she was torn between love and loyalty to her family. I didn't blame her. She was just blind, like everyone who has ever mistakenly believed in someone with a silver tongue. Afterward, I sat alone in my study. I opened the old safe. Inside were 2 envelopes I hadn't touched in over 20 years. One held the copy of the contract with the Meridian Group. The other was a handwritten letter from Marion, my wife. I didn't open them. I just put my hand on the yellowed paper and whispered, "Maybe it's time, isn't it, my love?" I closed the safe, locked it. Outside, it started to rain. I watched the drops run down the window, reflecting my shadow in the glass, old, alone, but with a clearer gaze than ever. In that moment, I understood. A father is only truly weak when he stops protecting his children. And I, Richard Harrison, had never been that kind of man. That night, I wrote a single line in my notebook. If they want a war, they'll get one, but not with weapons, with the truth. The next morning, the Austin sky was covered in a fine mist. The smell of damp earth in the air reminded me of the first days building the ranch with Marion. I made a strong coffee, grabbed the folder, and drove to the little cafe on 6th Street, where I was meeting Robert Casey. He was already waiting, thinner, his hair grayer than before, but he still had the firm gaze of an experienced man. When I walked in, Robert just nodded, saying nothing. We sat in silence for a moment, letting the sound of spoons against ceramic mix with the old radio. Finally, I broke the silence. "It's been 25 years, Robert. Do you still remember that contract?" He took a sip of his coffee, his gaze lost in the distance. "How could I forget, Richard? I witnessed your signature myself that day. Meridian never forgets a favor." I pulled the copy of the contract from my pocket. The letters were faded, the ink blurred by time. I've kept this for so many years, hiding it even from my own daughter. You know, last night she watched me, watched her husband slap me at her wedding, all for this land. Robert sighed, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Meridian has always considered you the honorary administrator, but you never let them know what you wanted." I let out a bitter laugh. I just wanted to protect it, just like I protect the memory of my wife. Robert was quiet, then he said something that stunned me. "Richard, do you know who added that last clause to the contract that year?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" Robert opened his briefcase. He took out a photocopy and pointed to a small line at the bottom of the page. "The right of full recovery of the Double C Ranch will be granted to the owner's daughter, provided her commitment to the land is demonstrated." I stared at that line. My heart was pounding. Underneath was the signature, Marion Reed Harrison. I was shaking. My fingers brushed against that familiar handwriting. "She did this? Without me knowing?" Robert nodded. "She wanted to protect Avery's future. When you sold the ranch to Meridian to pay the hospital bills, she asked to add that clause, on the condition that Meridian keep it secret until it was necessary. I leaned back in the chair, feeling both pain and warmth in my chest at the same time. It was like hearing my wife's voice in the wind. "I'll take care of our daughter, even when I'm not here," Robert continued. "Meridian has kept its word. They were just waiting for the day you'd call. Now you can request they officially open the file." I nodded, looking far off through the window. Outside, the sunlight was faintly breaking through the mist, illuminating the old rooftops. For 25 years, I had lived in silence, believing I was just a salaried manager. But it turned out Marion had made me the guardian of a legacy. Not through power, but through trust, I said quietly, almost like an oath. If she trusted like that, this time I won't let anyone touch that land, even if it costs me everything. Robert gave a sad smile. "I knew you'd say that. Meridian will be waiting for you at the Austin office tomorrow morning. It's time for this land to go back to who it belongs to, Richard." I shook his hand. In my mind, the image of my wife from years ago returned, smiling in the middle of a golden field. For the first time in many years, I felt my heart grow warm again. And for the first time, I was ready for the real battle. I got back to the ranch at sunset. The wind was blowing hard from the west, dragging dust and the smell of dry grass, the familiar smell of memories. I opened the door to the study. The afternoon light came through the thin curtain covering the desk where the old safe sat, the one I hadn't opened in years. Today, I knew I had to. I sat down, put my hand on the lock, listening to the metal scrape against metal. The safe door opened slowly, heavy as if it held my entire past. Inside, among yellowed papers and the smell of mildew, was a pale yellow envelope, its corners worn, and on it, familiar handwriting. For Richard, when the time comes. With trembling hands, I opened it. A handwritten letter, the handwriting slightly slanted, soft. Marion's handwriting, the smell of old paper, of ink, a faint scent of perfume, like the breath of the person I had lost. I read every line, and every word was like a knife, painful and gentle at the same time. My Richard, if you are reading this letter, it means something has happened. Maybe you are hurt or our daughter has lost her way. Meridian isn't just the buyer of the land. They are the guardians of our promise. I added a clause to the contract that when Avery matured and understood the value of this land, the full ownership would be returned to her. Don't be angry with me, because I believe this is the only way this land will always belong to our family. Not through money, but through love. I put the letter on the desk. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, but from an overwhelming emotion. It turned out that all this time, Marion had been watching over me, silently protecting this family with a wisdom and faith I had underestimated. I remembered the day she died, her eyes still bright in her final hours. She took my hand and said, "Promise me, no matter what happens, you'll never let anyone separate this land from our daughter." I promised, but that promise, I thought, was just the words of someone about to leave. Now I understood it was her spiritual will. I opened another drawer, took out old photos. Marion in the middle of the cornfield, a smile on her dusty face. Avery as a little girl sitting on my shoulders, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. And me, in a faded shirt, a proud look in my eyes. Everything was contained in 2 words, double C. I regained my calm. I called Robert. "I read the letter, my friend. Marion was smarter than we thought." "I know. Meridian is ready to reopen the case. You just need to sign the official request." "I'll do it. But this time, it's not for me to get the land back. It's for my daughter to see the truth." When I hung up, I stood and looked out the window. The sun was setting, staining the field red. In that moment, I felt as if the wind was whispering my wife's name. I smiled and said softly, "Rest easy, Marion. This time, I'm not going to lose." I closed the safe. I put the letter in the inside pocket of my shirt. The sky outside was an intense red, like a promise awakened after 25 years of sleep. I knew the battle ahead wasn't just to protect the land, but to preserve the most valuable thing Marion had left, faith in love and justice. I couldn't sleep that night. In my head, Marion's voice echoed, mixed with the whistle of the wind outside the window. I sat in the study. The desk lamp lit up the old letter I had just reread, as if I was afraid I'd forget every stroke of her handwriting. Just then, the phone vibrated with a message from Jack, the ranch's head of security, my loyal employee for over 20 years. The message was just a few words. "Boss, look at this." Attached was an audio file. I opened it. Between the noise of the wind and clinking glasses, Alan's voice echoed, hoarse and smug. "The old man is finished. Tomorrow, after the wedding, I'll have total control of the ranch. I just need that idiot daughter of his to sign." I heard that, and my hands clenched until my knuckles were white. Then, his voice came again, low and fast. "Dallas is ready. The buyer's offering $8 million, and I keep $200,000 as commission. All clean." I stopped the file, in silence. A few seconds passed. My heart slowed down. My breathing steadied. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a coldness that ran through my body. He hadn't just humiliated me. He was planning to sell the very soul of this family. I called Jack back. "When did you hear this?" "Last night, boss. He was talking to someone at the bar in the Grand Austin Hotel. I sent the original file to your email." "Good. Keep quiet. If anyone asks, tell them the boss is sick and resting." I hung up, opened my old computer, logged into my email, and downloaded the recording. As I listened to it again, my gaze fell on the small photo on the desk, a picture of Marion holding Avery as a baby. Their smiles were so tender that I had to bow my head, feeling like I had never protected them enough. The night wore on, but I didn't turn off the light. I took my notebook and started to write. Proof. 1. Recording. September 15th. Grand Austin Bar. Speaker. Alan Monroe. I wrote every word clearly, as if I were carving a tombstone for the trust I once had in him. The next morning, I went to the Meridian offices. The tall glass building reflected the cloudy Austin sky. Robert met me in the lobby, taking me straight to the conference room. "We received the recording," he said. "The board will review it immediately. Alan Monroe was already on our radar. He has a history of fraud in 2 other states and owes almost $200,000. I frowned. "I guess he was planning to pay his debt with other people's sweat." Robert nodded. "And with your honor, Richard. But don't worry, Meridian won't let that happen." We signed a series of documents. We opened the old file for the Double C, and for the first time in 25 years, the Meridian Group's confidential stamp was pressed onto a new memo. Before I left, Robert said quietly, "The board will visit the ranch tomorrow morning. We need to witness him expose himself. Are you ready?" I looked at him, my voice firm. "I've been ready since the moment he raised his hand to hit me." That night, back home, I sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The twilight light stained the field red. A bright, heartbreaking red. I knew there was only one day left until all the masks came off, and then Alan would understand that he had just declared war on the one man he should have never crossed, a father who still owed his wife an unkept promise. The next morning, just as the first light flooded the valley, I heard the roar of engines in the distance. Several black SUVs were coming up the gravel road that led to the Double C Ranch. Red dust kicked up, clouding the line of trees. I was standing on the porch, my shirt buttoned to the top, gripping a cup of cold coffee tightly. They had arrived. The Meridian board. 6 people, impeccably dressed, each representing a different branch of the conglomerate. Leading them was Mrs. Eleanor Carter, a woman with silver hair and deep eyes, who Robert had said carried the spirit of my wife within the company. She got out of the SUV, extending her hand to me. "Mr. Harrison, it's been a long time. Meridian has never forgotten Mrs. Marion Harrison's promise." Hearing that name echo in the morning light, I bowed my head slightly. "She had more foresight than I ever knew," I replied, "and I'm afraid I need that vision now to save what's left." They filed into my old study, which still smelled of oak and tobacco smoke. Mrs. Carter placed a thick folder on the desk, full of updated documents. The old contract, the recording I sent, and the evidence Meridian had gathered in the last few days. She opened the meeting with a calm voice. "Alan Monroe has a history of financial fraud in Phoenix and Denver. He took advantage of 2 wealthy women to get loans and then disappeared. Right now he owes $198,000 to a dark fund in Dallas. If he doesn't pay, he'll be prosecuted under interstate laws." I stayed silent, staring at his photo in the file. a confident smile, a hard but empty gaze, the face of someone who had forgotten the line between ambition and crime. Another member spoke. "You were publicly assaulted by him, correct?" I nodded slowly. "In front of 200 people, and worse, in front of my daughter. But I don't want revenge. I just want her to see who he is." Mrs. Carter smiled slightly, a touch of compassion in her eyes. "You're no different from your wife, Richard. She also believed that justice doesn't always need violence." Robert opened his laptop. He played the recording of Alan talking about selling the land to Dallas. His voice filled the room. 8 million, all clean. I clenched my fists, but I said nothing. Mrs. Carter signaled for the secretary to take notes and then said firmly, "Meridian officially confirms. All assets belonging to the Double C remain under our ownership. Alan Monroe was found responsible for serious financial misconduct involving company assets. The board unanimously approves opening a legal investigation and presenting the case to the Economic Tribunal in Austin." I raised my head. "No, don't do it. I don't want him in jail. I just want him to see his end with his own eyes and understand that money can't buy trust." Mrs. Carter looked at me for a moment. Then she nodded slightly. "All right? But we still need the final proof. For him to destroy himself. Are you willing to face him one more time?" I exhaled, my voice low but firm. "If it's the only way to end this, I'll do it." She stood up, shaking my hand. "Then we'll let his own words reveal the truth. Tomorrow we play the final chess match." When they left, the black SUVs disappeared again behind the cloud of red dust. I stood motionless, watching the sun hit the old wooden sign. Inside me, the fear was gone. Only a strange sense of peace remained. Finally, Marion's justice was about to speak, and I, who had kept silent for 25 years, was preparing to speak for her. That afternoon, the sun in Austin was so intense the air felt sticky on the skin. I sat in the study with Robert. The ceiling fan turned slowly. The ticking of the clock sounded like a countdown to Judgment Day. On the table was the copy of the old Double C contract, a cup of black coffee, and the USB drive with the recording of Alan talking about the ranch sale. Our plan was almost complete. Robert spoke, his voice firm. "He'll walk right into the trap himself, Richard. He thinks you're weak, that you'll give in. When you pretend to agree to sign over the rights, he'll reveal everything. We just need to record it all." I looked out the window, where the wind was blowing through the live oak trees. Inside me, the mix of anger and pity still hadn't settled. I asked quietly, "Have you ever felt pain at having to prove someone is a liar?" Robert sighed. "Of course. But sometimes, to save the one you love, you have to let the truth hurt before it can heal." I nodded. I understood that better than anyone. Avery still knew nothing. She was living in the illusion that her new husband was a hero, and I was just a stubborn old man. But tomorrow, that illusion would shatter. To perfect the plan, I called Mrs. Eleanor Carter. She answered, her voice deep and certain. "Are you ready, Richard?" "I've been ready since the night he raised his hand to hit me," I answered. "Good. The board will be at the ranch at 10 sharp, but let him talk. Don't interrupt him. When he confesses, we'll act." I hung up, leaning back in the chair. The photo of Marion on the wall looked at me with tender eyes. I said softly, as if she were there, "You see, my love? Your love is still protecting this place." That night I went out to the old barn, a quiet, old place. From a wooden box I took out the mini recorder Robert had given me, a special model that could transmit data directly to Meridian's server. I placed it under the table, right where Alan would sit tomorrow. Outside, lightning flashed across the dark sky. It was about to rain. I stood in the middle of the courtyard, looking up at the wide-open Texas sky, wet with light, remembering how many times Marion and I had taken shelter from the rain there, laughing about being poor but happy. I wondered, if she were alive, would she have chosen this path? A trap to protect the truth? And the answer came with the wind. Yes. Because the truth doesn't kill anyone. It's the lies that kill you slowly. The next morning, I woke up early. White shirt, dark pants, polished shoes. No one could say I was a loser. Just as the sun was coming up over the hills, I heard Alan's car engine in the distance, loud music, tires crunching on the gravel. He was arriving, punctual as someone confident in his victory. I stood in the middle of the courtyard, holding a stack of blank papers. When the car stopped, he got out, smiling with arrogance. "Well, well, looks like you finally understood how things are. Dad." I smiled slightly. "That's right, Alan. I understand more than you can imagine. And today, all of this ends." He didn't know that every step he took, every word he said, was already being recorded by Meridian, the final proof of a crime he himself had designed, and that he himself was about to sign. The next morning, Austin woke up under a heavy gray sky. The clouds were so thick they seemed to be crushing the fields. The air was dense with the smell of damp earth. I got up at dawn. I put on a perfectly ironed white shirt, buttoning the collar tightly. Today, I wasn't the old man humiliated at the wedding. I was the man of the double C, the one who would finish the play Alan had been directing. Exactly at 10, the sound of an engine echoed outside. A luxury car slid into the courtyard, tires crunching on the gravel. He got out wearing a light-colored suit, his hair slicked back, his strong cologne overpowering the smell of the grass. His face was beaming, confident, as if he were about to receive an award. "Good morning, Dad," he said, dragging out the words, his tone cold but fake friendly. "I see you dressed decently today. Finally understood how things are, didn't you?" I smiled slightly, my voice calm. "That's right, Alan. Times change very fast. Please, come in." In the living room, the table was set with papers and 2 cups of coffee. The light from the window streamed in, illuminating my face. Behind the wooden wall, the small recorder was running. And in another room, Mrs. Eleanor Carter and Robert were watching silently on a live monitor. Alan sat down, crossed his legs, smiling. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll leave you a cut of the profits. 8 million isn't small change. Dallas already has everything ready. I just need you to sign." I took the papers, pretending to look them over. "Dallas? Nice city? You planning to sell the whole place?" "Just a part," he replied indifferently. "But the buyer wants full rights to build a resort. You know, land is gold these days, and you. And I don't need gold anymore, right?" I looked him straight in the eye. Maybe he saw in them that there was no fear, only a suspicious calm. "You know something, Alan? Gold can't grow grass. It doesn't feed cattle either. It just makes people thirstier." He laughed. "Good advice, Dad. But I'm not thirsty. I just want to live comfortably, and this ranch is going to help me do it." He took out a pen, placed it on the table. "Sign, Dad. Think of it as a late wedding gift for your daughter." I nodded. I slowly picked up the pen and paused. "Before I sign, shouldn't we have witnesses, don't you think?" Alan frowned. "What witnesses?" The back door opened. The 6 members of the Meridian board walked in, led by Mrs. Eleanor Carter. He turned pale, jumping to his feet. "What the hell is this?" Mrs. Carter spoke clearly, every word like a hammer blow. "Mr. Alan Monroe, you are under investigation for attempted misappropriation of assets belonging to the Meridian Group, financial fraud and elder abuse. Every word you have said this morning has been recorded and certified." Alan stammered, his voice shaking. No, you don't have any proof." Robert stepped forward, placing the USB drive on the table. "It's all here. The call from last night, the recording from the Grand Austin bar, and even the threats you sent to Mr. Harrison." He looked around. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The arrogant face from before was now just a broken mask. You don't understand. I just wanted to protect Avery." I stepped closer, speaking slowly. "You protect her by slapping her father in front of 200 people and planning to sell the land her mother left for her?" Alan went silent. Then he hung his head. His voice was choked. "Dad." I cut him off. "Don't call me Dad. I thought you were family. But family doesn't stab the one who opened their arms to them." Mrs. Carter nodded to the security guards. They approached, gently taking him by the shoulders. "Mr. Monroe, please, leave." Alan looked at me one last time, his eyes a mix of anger and emptiness. I just said quietly, "You just taught me the most expensive lesson of my life. Trust is something no one can give you back once you've lost it." As they led him away, the wind picked up, scattering the papers on the table. I stood there in the silent room, listening to the pages slap against the window frame, and I knew that the storm of my life had finally passed. The room, after they took Alan away, fell into an unsettling silence. All that was left was the rustle of papers and the sound of my own heavy breathing. Mrs. Eleanor Carter closed the thick folder. She signed the minutes. She looked up and said, her voice clear and sharp as a knife, "The Meridian Board, based on the evidence presented, officially issues its verdict. All representation rights are revoked, and we will proceed legally against Mr. Alan Monroe for financial fraud and abuse." She paused, looking directly at me. "And as of today, the honorary administration of the Double C Ranch remains with you, Richard Harrison, until Miss Avery proves fit to inherit, according to the clause of the late Mrs. Marion Harrison." I bowed my head, feeling a great weight in my chest. That verdict was like a cold blade that, at the same time it cut the tie with the traitor, also cut deep into the last shred of faith I had in the young man I once considered my son. Robert handed me another folder, saying quietly, "If you want, we can file the criminal complaint tomorrow. The evidence is more than solid." I looked at him, slowly shaking my head. "No, Robert, he's already lost. We don't need to lock up someone who has destroyed himself. Let him carry this sentence for his whole life, the sentence of humiliation." Mrs. Carter watched me closely. She said softly, almost with admiration, "Mrs. Marion Harrison would be proud of you. Few people can hold on to compassion even after being wronged." I smiled slightly. "I'm not doing it out of humanity, ma'am. I'm doing it for my daughter. I don't want her to learn that revenge is the only way to end the pain." Outside, the wind howled, whipping the curtains. The flickering light lit up the paper I had just signed, making Meridian's red seal look like it was on fire. I stood up. I gave a slight nod to everyone. "Thank you, all of you. Today I not only got my honor back, but I gave meaning back to my wife's promise." When they left, the room was empty except for me. I sat down, put my hand to my forehead, closing my eyes. In my head, the image of Alan being escorted away kept replaying, not with satisfaction, but with pity. I once saw him as a young man with ambition, but that ambition was twisted by greed. And greed, as I'd once told Avery, kills love faster than anything else. A few soft knocks sounded at the door. Robert had come back, standing in the doorway. "Are you sure you don't regret it?" I smiled, saying slowly, "Regret? Maybe only that I didn't realize sooner that sometimes silence is also a way of fighting." When Robert left, I went out to the porch. The field stretched out before me. The wind brought the smell of earth after the rain. I looked to the west, where the sun was gradually hiding, and I whispered, "Do you hear me, Marion? I did exactly what you asked. No one else got hurt." At the end of the gravel road, the silhouettes of the Meridian SUVs disappeared behind the trees. In the sunset sky, I saw a flock of migrating birds fly by in a long, straight, firm line, as if reminding me that no matter how much life deviates, in the end, it must always find its way back to where it belongs. That afternoon, when the sun had softened over the hills, I heard a car stop out front, a familiar pearl-colored sedan. Avery got out. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She was still wearing her wedding dress, now wrinkled and stained. She stood motionless at the entrance for a long time, as if afraid to enter the place that was once her home. I went out to the porch. I called her name softly. "Avery, come on in, honey." She looked up. Her lips were trembling. "Dad, they're saying Alan was arrested? Is it true?" I looked her straight in the eye, with the gaze of a father who no longer fears losing his daughter, but still fears hurting her. "No one arrested him. He just found his own consequences." She shook her head. Tears welled up. "What did you do, Dad? Why did you do this to my husband?" That question was like a needle driving straight into my heart. But I didn't dodge it. I held out my hand, my voice soft. "Come inside, and I'll tell you everything." In the living room, the air was so thick you could almost touch it. I poured some water. I handed her the glass and sat down across from her. On the table was the Meridian folder and her mother's letter, which I had kept for 25 years. I spoke slowly, word for word. "Honey, I didn't want you to find out this way, but you need to understand. The Double C Ranch has never been mine. 25 years ago, I sold it to the Meridian Group to save your mother." Avery looked up, her teary eyes wide. You sold it?" Then, everything I believed. It was a lie? I interrupted her, my voice firm but not harsh. But not a lie meant to hurt you. Your mother left a secret clause. I opened the yellow envelope. I gave her the old letter. She took it, trembling, reading the soft lines of a voice she never got to hear. If our daughter comes to love this land as her father does, it will be returned to her, not by blood, but by true love for the land. Avery hugged the letter to her chest and broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I let her cry. I didn't comfort her, because there are some pains that can only be washed away with tears. When she calmed down a little, I continued. Alan knew about this. He wanted to take over everything. He hit me in front of everyone and was planning to sell the land to pay his debts. Meridian knew everything, and they acted. Pah! She clutched the letter, her voice choked. I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it, but did he really do that? I nodded. And he was planning to use you to legalize it all with your signature. Avery sat there in silence. The sunset light came through the window, illuminating her tear-streaked face. After a long time, she asked quietly, as if afraid of her own answer. Did you hide this from me because you were afraid of hurting me, or because you were afraid of losing me? I answered, a lump in my throat. Both. But now I understand that hiding the truth is the fastest way to lose a child. She stood up, walked over to me, and knelt, hugging my old hands. Forgive me, Dad. I was so blind. I let him turn me against the only person who was always by my side. I put my hand on her head, gently stroking her hair, smiling through my own tears. It's over now, Avery. The important thing is, you came back. And now, you need time to forgive yourself, not me. Outside, the last rays of sun fell on the field, painting the young corn gold. In that light, I saw Marion's shadow again, the tender smile of a mother looking at her daughter who had finally found her way back to the truth. After that day, the house became strangely quiet. Avery didn't leave, but she didn't say anything more either. She took refuge in her mother's old room, where the afternoon light filtered through the lace curtain, leaving blurry patches of light on the faded wall. I heard my daughter cry for many nights in a row, silently, like rain falling on the roof. I didn't knock on her door, because I understood. There are wounds that can't be bandaged with words. They can only heal gradually, in the silence. In the morning, I'd get up early as always, make coffee, open the door to let the sun in, and she still wouldn't come out of her room. I'd leave a tray of food outside her door. I wouldn't knock. I'd just put a small note on it. When you're ready, I'll be out on the porch. 3 days later, on a windy afternoon, I saw the bedroom door open slowly. Avery came out. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clearer. She was wearing an old jacket of her mother's, still holding the letter she had been reading all those days. I didn't say anything. I just offered her a glass of water. We both sat in silence, just listening to the wind blowing through the live oak trees. Dad, I've read this letter over and over, she said, her voice hoarse from crying. I understand why Mom did it, but I'm so ashamed, Dad. I trusted someone like Alan, and I doubted my own father. I smiled, my voice as light as a sigh. Honey, anyone can be blinded. The important thing is that you stopped before you went too far. Your mother would be proud of that. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said softly, I don't know where to start over. I pointed to the field in front of us, right here. The land never betrays anyone. When you put your hands in it, you'll understand what your mother meant. The next day, I saw her put on her boots, tie her hair back, and go out to the corral with me. Her movements were still clumsy, but her eyes were full of determination. She asked me how to plant corn, how to choose the seeds, how to tell if the earth was damp. Every question she asked warmed my heart. At noon, we sat in the shade of the old pecan tree, sweating. Avery looked off into the distance. Her voice trembled slightly. I spent 2 years living in a house that wasn't real, with a person who wasn't real. But I realize this is where I belong. I don't want to run away anymore. I nodded. No one is making you run, Avery. The double C has always been here, waiting for you. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Avery walked along the fence line, gently touching the wood. And then she turned to look at me. the sunlight reflected in her eyes, shining like the light I used to see in Marion. In that moment, I understood that I hadn't just saved the ranch. I had also saved my daughter's heart. Night came. The wind blew softly through the window. I heard Avery singing softly in her room, the old melody Marion used to hum to her. Her singing was faint but full of life, like a seedling growing after a long rain. I smiled slightly. In the darkness, I whispered, "Thank you, Marion. At last, our daughter has found herself." 3 months passed since Alan left Austin. No one ever mentioned him again, as if that name had never existed. Life slowly returned to the familiar rhythm of the Double C Ranch, the lowing of the cows in the morning, the smell of dry hay, and the wind blowing across the vast pastures. But inside me, there was still something heavy that hadn't lifted, the fear that my daughter would forever see the past as a scar that would never heal. Avery, after the crisis, changed a lot. Every morning she got up early, went out to the field with me, got into the mud, cut hay, fed the cattle. The girl who used to live for parties and fancy restaurants now knew how to handle a shovel, how to predict the rain by the direction of the wind, and she smiled a real smile every time sweat dripped down her cheeks. Watching her, I felt both pity and pride. Her mother, if she were alive, would surely be crying with happiness. One afternoon, we were resting under the shade of the pecan tree. Avery was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about everything. Some nights I dream about Alan, but I don't feel anger anymore. Just pity." I looked at her, my voice low. "Forgiving isn't weakness, Avery. It's the only way to be able to move forward. Grudges just keep you chained to the person who hurt you." She nodded. Tears ran down her face. "I understand. Mom used to say that the land always forgives whoever knows how to take care of it. I think I have to learn to do that too." In the afternoon, I saw her cleaning her mother's room. She put a small vase on the table. She reframed the old wedding photo. When I passed by, she said without turning around, "I'm going to keep this room just as it was, not to remember the sadness, but to remember not to forget the kindness." Night came. The country wind brought the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers. I saw Avery writing something in a notebook. When I asked, she just smiled. "I'm writing a letter to Mom. I'm not going to send it anywhere. I just want to tell her I don't hold a grudge anymore." The next day, Mrs. Eleanor Carter came to visit. She saw Avery working in the stables, smiling with satisfaction. "This girl has fire in her heart," she told me. "I've seen many people crumble after a loss, but very few transform suffering into strength like she has." I answered with a lump in my throat, "because she has the two strongest things from her mother inside her, faith and love." That night, as the sun set behind the hills, Avery sat with me on the porch steps. In front of us was the freshly watered field, reflecting the red twilight. She said softly, as if afraid the wind would take her words, "Dad, I've forgiven Alan, not because he deserves it, but because I deserve to be at peace." I looked at her. My calloused hand took her soft one. "You know, that's how your mother lived. She never returned vengeance, only gratitude." High above, the sky was starting to change color. Flocks of swallows flew past, their calls long and clear. I knew from that day on that in my daughter's heart a new season had begun, the season of peace after the storm. And in my heart, too. I turned to tell her softly, my voice trembling but warm. "You just learned something that took your father almost 60 years to understand. Forgiveness is also a form of courage." One morning in early fall, when the dew was still shining on the leaves and the rooster's crow echoed in the distance, I got a call from Mrs. Eleanor Carter. Her voice was low and clear. "Richard, the Meridian Board has finished its meeting. We have decided to execute the final clause of the late Mrs. Marion Harrison's contract." I held my breath. I could only hear my heart beating. "Does that mean—" "That's right," she interrupted, her voice calm but warm. "The Double C Ranch will be transferred to Miss Avery Harrison as the legitimate heir and as the only person who has met the condition, to demonstrate a true love for this land." I sank into the chair, my eyes wet. 25 years of keeping a secret, so much bitterness, and finally it was all coming to an end. I looked out the window, where Avery, wearing a straw hat, was tending to the corn sprouts. The morning light covered her shoulders in a soft golden hue, and I understood. She had become the image of her mother all those years ago. That afternoon, the Meridian convoy arrived again, this time not to investigate, but to deliver. They set up a table in the middle of the courtyard, spread out a white tablecloth, and on it they placed the thick folder, the dark red seal, and the old key to the double C that I had held for decades. Mrs. Carter looked at Avery with a kind but serious smile. "Young lady, your mother saw this coming a long time ago. She knew that one day you would return, that you would understand that no one truly owns the land, but that the land owns us." Avery bowed her head, tears in her eyes. "I just did what I should have done from the beginning." She handed her the folder, her voice solemn. "As of today, the Double C Ranch officially belongs to Miss Avery Harrison. Meridian is stepping away, but we will always be here if you need us." I stood beside her, in silence. When Avery signed the document, her hand was shaking. I put my hand on my daughter's shoulder and said quietly, "You just achieved what your mother always dreamed of." When the red seal was stamped on the paper, the wind from the field blew hard, whipping her hair. Everyone was silent for a few seconds. It seemed as if the sky and the earth were also bowing their heads to that moment. At night we sat on the porch, under a sky full of stars. Avery was holding the old key and offered it to me. "You keep it. Dad, even if I'm the owner, this is still your home." I took her hand, shaking my head gently. "No, Avery. From now on, I'll just be your administrator. Your mother used to say, this land will only be truly protected when it's in the hands of someone who knows how to love it." And now I see she was right. Avery smiled through her tears. "I won't fail Mom, and I won't fail you either, Dad." In the distance, the light from the stables cast a warm yellow stripe. The sound of insects mixed with the wind like a soft melody. I looked at my daughter, the new woman of the Double C, and my heart felt light. So many years bent under the weight, and now I could let it go. I said quietly, as if talking to Marion somewhere in the wind, "You see, my love? Your love has returned to the right place. The land has chosen the person worthy of continuing our dream." Under the silver moonlight, Avery rested her head on my shoulder, whispering, "Dad, I finally understand. It's not us who take care of the land. It's the land that keeps us together." I closed my eyes, smiling. For the first time in so many years, I felt truly at peace. One afternoon, late in the month, when the autumn wind had already stained the rows of trees yellow, the mailman drove up to the ranch and handed me a thick envelope. No return address, just a few words scrawled by hand. "For Mr. Richard Harrison." I recognized that handwriting immediately. "Alan." I opened the letter. Inside were a few carelessly folded pages, still smelling of cigarette smoke. His voice echoed in every line, a mix of regret and arrogance. "I know you think I deserve to be punished, and maybe you're right. I lost everything, from my honor to my love. Somewhere deep down, I still believe I did it for love of Avery, but I can't even justify it anymore. The man who dares to hit his wife's father in front of everyone has nothing left to say. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that for the first time in my life, I envy you. You have something money can't buy. A daughter's trust. Take care of Avery. Don't tell her I wrote this letter. If she's already found peace, I have no right to disturb it. Goodbye, Alan." I finished reading. I sat in silence for a long time. No anger, no contempt, just a strange feeling, like watching a lost soul looking for the way back. I folded the letter. I went out to the courtyard. The sunset was glorious. The fields were shining with a golden hue. Avery was leading the horse. Her hair blew in the wind. I burned the envelope with my old lighter. The small flame flickered, consuming those scrawled letters. As the ashes fell, I said quietly, as if sending a message to someone far away, "I hope you find the human part of you, Alan. To forgive isn't to forget. It's to stop being in chains." Avery ran over to me. She saw me standing by the ashes and asked, "What are you burning, Dad?" I smiled. "Something that's not needed anymore, honey. Just a few old memories." She nodded slightly, not asking any more questions, and took my hand as we walked toward the stables. Under the twilight, the shadows of the father and daughter stretched long on the dirt path. I suddenly realized there are hatreds that don't need to be won. They just need to learn how to dissolve in the wind. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "In the end, justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from peace in the heart, and I, who once wanted revenge, now just want to live long enough to see my daughter be happy." That year, winter came late. On the fields of the Double C, the morning dew covered the trees, the cattle grazed peacefully, and in the wooden house, the fire crackled in the fireplace. Avery was sitting at the table, reviewing the ranch's account books, her hair pulled back, her face lit with the determination of someone who is truly matured. I was sitting on the porch, wrapped in an old wool scarf, listening to the horses whinny in the distance and smelling the aroma of coffee on the wind. I no longer thought about the days of humiliation. I no longer remembered the anger or the bitter words. Everything was in the past, like the earth after a rain, softer, more fertile. I just felt my heart was light because everything had finally returned to its place. At noon, Avery brought me a folder. "Dad, here's the finalized contract. Now the Double C is officially in my name." I took it. My fingers trembled slightly. Under the signatures, the red seal was stamped, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel loss. I felt pride. I handed the folder back to her. "Keep it safe, not for its value, but because it's the witness to your mother's faith." Avery nodded slightly and sat down next to me. "I'm still not used to people calling me ma'am. It sounds like I'm mom." I let out a soft laugh. "When you manage to do what your mother did, love this land with all your heart, then that title will come to you on its own." In the afternoon, we went out to the field. The sun was pale, the grass was swaying, the swallows were flying in circles in the sky. Avery was leading the horse by the bridle, and I walked beside her at a slow pace. She said, "I didn't buy the land, Dad. I just bought my mother's memories to keep them alive." I looked at my daughter, deeply moved. "Memories can't be bought, honey. They just need to be treasured." We stopped by the old wooden fence. From there, the view of the ranch was immense, the rows of green corn under a pink sky. I clasped my hands behind my back and said softly, as if talking to myself, "Sometimes the best revenge is just to live in peace." Avery turned, smiling radiantly. The wind tossed her hair, the light reflecting in her eyes like a promise. In that moment, I knew. All the pain, all the trials, all the losses had been worth it just to have this moment. A family that had found each other again, a soul that had found peace. And in the middle of that vast landscape, I heard, as if it were Marion's voice whispering in the wind, "You see, Richard? In the end, the land always stays with those who know how to love it." I looked up at the sky, smiling. Peace. That thing I had been searching for all my life. It had finally returned, light as the breeze, real as a breath. If this story captivated you, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left of the screen. Thanks for watching.